I know I was asking you a question about the Mavericks and the Clippers game, but obviously I still think, in my opinion, Kawhi Leonard is the top five player in the NBA right now. I know you don't think that, but what's up, man? What do you got on us today?
Man, all I know is that they're letting a little young 20-year-old walk around these guys, and it's ridiculous. But he's unstoppable. He's going to be a top three player in the rest of the and for the years to come, and I'm very excited for that. Very excited for that.
Okay, well, I'm tired of hearing your voice already because I don't want to hear about no Dallas Maverick stuff. But today we are in another edition of Talk Your Exposure. This is going to be a special one, especially for you, Devontae, because you played in the CEBL this past summer. You had an opportunity to play in the CEBL. We're joined today by the commissioner of the CEBL and a former CFL two-time Grey Cup champion, Mike Morreale. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing well, guys. I'm doing well. It's nice to chat with you, and nice to see Devontae again. And I certainly appreciate the reminder. The bubble was a crazy time last year, so it was a tremendous experience. It wasn't your typical CBL experience, but we made the best of it, and I think it turned out all right. And we're excited to get going again for real June 24th.
And we're actually excited to talk all about that in a little bit. Devontae's gonna have some questions for you, but I want to ask you though to start off the show because you mentioned a bubble. But how has 2020/2021 been for you personally?
Well, it's like everybody. I mean, it's been trying, right? And everybody deals with what we're going through in their own ways, and some have worse experiences, some have better. I don't think anybody's having a great one. But we personally, everything's been good. Everyone's healthy. My kids got their vaccinations. My wife's good. I'm good. I look around here in the office. Our staff is good and ready to go. But it's trying times. We've always had the mantra that if you just concentrate and commit to something, and just put you have a goal in mind. And our goal was to return to play last year in our bubble, which we were the first ones in the country to do. And I don't ever want to do it again. And we would have done the damn same thing again this year. But we put our mind to a return to a little bit more normal. And that was coming back in our home markets, even without fans, and just giving a sense of normalcy for the players, for the coaches, but even for the community. So we're fighting through it, and we feel good on the way we're coming out the other side.
You're a busy man. We know that, like I mentioned earlier, you were CFL, you're part of the CFL. Two-time Grey Cup champion, owner of CBL. What is some things that you've been allowed to do or been able to do during the pandemic that you wouldn't typically be able to do on a regular basis?
Oh man, that's a real good question. A lot of what we've been able to do is really commit to really making sure we can get back to play. And for me, 50% of my time is spent on making sure we could play this year, and that includes weekly, bi-weekly meetings with government officials and health authorities and everybody that's connected to our game in one way, shape, or form, broadcast, media, etc. But also planning for the future. So the future of the CEBL is incredibly bright. And it's because of all the hard work we've done to date. So what I've been able to concentrate on during COVID, I haven't been able to do much of anything I wanted to do, but I certainly have dove into work like the rest of our staff has. And we've made some huge gains and huge impressions. So as terrible as the pandemic has been on everyone, we do see the brightness in it. And, for us playing last year in the bubble was a huge brand awareness play. It kind of catapulted us where we were. It exposed our talent. And Devontae will tell you the talent in the CBL is top notch, and it only gets better every year. I don't think people realize that. I don't think Canadians appreciate the talent level because they haven't been able to see a lot of these players. They all have to leave to go overseas. So to bring them back home, put them all in the court, all that are stars in their overseas team is really fun.
And we're definitely going to get into CBL in a bit. But before we move forward with anything, we've actually had a few CBL players on this podcast. We've had Dwayne Notice, we've had Negus Weather-Chan, we've had Shane Osiande. We've had a lot of guys that have talked very highly of the CBL. And like we said earlier, we're going to talk about the CBL later, and Devontae's going to have a few questions for you. But before we get to the CBL, though, we got to dive into your football career a little bit. What got you into football? Like, what made you want to play football?
Well, I mean, I grew up in a football family, so on both sides. So on the Morreale side, huge football fans. All my grandparents, my great aunts, the great uncles, like they were just into football. And my dad Played football at St. Mary's University out east, and didn't last beyond 1 year because he failed out. But he kind of, I remember growing up seeing it, and then as a kid, 5 years old, I grew up in Hamilton, going to Ivor Wynne Stadium and sitting in the stands and being surrounded by that atmosphere and watching Rocky DiPietro and Grover Covington and Ben Zambiasi. All guys are a lot older than you, but more my era, and just being enamored by the opportunity. And in that, being able to see it was important, because it provided an opportunity for me to aspire to that goal, to be on that field. So not dissimilar to what we've created in the CEBL, is finally an opportunity to be able to see it and touch it and feel it and aspire to it. So further to that, on the other side, the Masadi side, my mom's side, Paul Masadi, my first cousin, played 13 years with the Argos. I got a chance to play with him. His brother Christian played a few years in Edmonton, and so that was all part of me growing up. And I just, I played soccer my whole life up until I didn't play football until grade 10. Wow. And I just was decent at it. I was good at it, and I loved it. And I had those people to look up to, which I think in my mind said, oh hell, if they can do it, then I got a legit chance to do it too.
No, that's fair. That's completely fair. But I'm curious to know though, I know you said you started playing in grade 10. Usually, typically, especially in our era now, a lot of people want to, as basketball, football, whatever it is, they want to take that route to go to the States. I'm curious to know, did you have any opportunities to go to the States for university or college basketball or college football, or was it only here in Canada that you had?
No, I had a bunch of offers. They were all partial scholarships, and I just wasn't, there was nothing there was fully committed. And it's all about feel, right? Feel and vibe. And I just felt, well, hell, if you really wanted me, you put together a legitimate offer. At that time, that's going back to mid 90s. Canadian football was strong, but not as strong as it is now. I mean, the talent levels increased, the coaching levels increased, the awareness level on a national stage. You'll see a lot more Canadians get opportunities now. But I didn't go, and you know what? The end result was exactly what I wanted. So I didn't grow up wanting to be in the NFL. I grew up wanting to play in the CFL. So I didn't give a shit how I got there. I just wanted to get there. And, I chose MAC, not because I wanted to stay at home, but because I went for a visit. And, I lived in Hamilton my whole life, never went and visited the campus, had no idea about it. And I was like, wow, this place is cool. And at that particular year, our draft class, or the draft class that was going into MAC, was really strong. And a lot of guys that I played against in high school, went to Cathedral or went to St. Mary's or went to Brebeuf and all these places, they were kind of our rivals. And they were committing to MAC. I was like, well, that's a good group of guys. I'm going to take a chance. And it was a great decision.
No, and it definitely was a great decision for you, because in the early 2000s, you were actually, you were named to the McMaster Hall of Fame. What did that moment mean to you, to be able to share that moment with your family, for yourself, for your kids to be able to see your name down the line when they go to McMaster? Speak to us about all those emotions.
Man, that's those individual accomplishments are so weird sometimes. They're hard to really fully accept until you're way past it. Because you didn't get there on your own. I mean, especially football, you got 60 other guys that got to help you get to that podium or to get to that accolade. So it was incredible. I mean, it still is. And I'll take my kids by McMaster and my pictures up, and I'll kind of show them the plaque. I'm like, hey, that's Dad, and then we move on. I mean, there's not a lot of they don't bow down to it or anything. It is what it is, and we move on. But it's nice to be remembered in that way, as accomplishing something that meant something to the school or to the team. But I think as you get older, you kind of appreciate those moments more. Nothing's better than winning championships. That's the ultimate goal. But the personal accolades, they mean something. At least it shows that all the effort you put in, paid off.
Well, those accolades continued. In 1994, you were drafted in the second round by British Columbia. Did you expect to get drafted, or was it unexpected? How was that experience?
Yeah, that was really interesting. So at that time, I put my name into the draft early in my third year, which you don't get entered into the draft into your fourth year. You can ask for your third, you can defer to your fifth. That's what it was like back then. It may have changed slightly. So I put my name in my third year, which was, I came from school. We never made the playoffs at MAC. Never had a winning season. So I knew I was a good player, but we weren't nationally recognized. So, it was going to be an uphill battle for me, but I knew I could play, and I knew if I'd given the opportunity that I could do it. And at that time, I just felt I'm going to take my chance now. And if it doesn't work, I'll just go back to back for my fourth year anyways. I mean, I'm not going to lose anything, and I'll get valuable experience. So I went to the combine, which was in Winnipeg, had a really good combine, felt very confident in my ability, competed well against the other kind of receivers that were in the draft. And luckily got drafted to BC. Now, my experience in BC was very short. I lasted about a week and I was home. And that was probably the lowest part of my career. It was just a matter of opportunity. I just didn't get an opportunity. I was a young kid. There's a lot of other young players vying to make the team. It was a very veteran roster. And one of the Canadian receivers had retired just before the season. So that backup opportunity didn't present itself anymore. So after, I think, less than a week, it was about 5 days, I was sent home. And I'll never forget leaving at the time. Oh my God, I forget the coach's name. But he Dave Ritchie, he said, "Hey, what are you going to do now? We unfortunately going to let you go." I said, "Well, I'm going to go back to school." He goes, "Oh, you have eligibility left?" I said, "Yeah, 2 years." He's like, "Oh, I didn't know that." I said, "Well, at this point, you've already made your decision. So you come home, and the beauty for me is it worked out well. The third year, even though it was a short period of time, I in a hurry, you learn the difference between college and pros. I mean, it's not hard to figure that out. You figure it out real quick. So, I took those learnings, even though they were short, and brought them back. And then a desire to get back there, and came back to Mac for my fourth season. And then after the season, Toronto picked me up as a free agent.
Yeah, well, you went through some rocky roads, but it seems like in the end it paid off, because in 1996 you win the Grey Cup, beating Edmonton with Toronto. A few years later, 1999, you win again with Hamilton, but beating Calgary. Which championship felt better?
Oh, both of them are amazing, and I'll tell you why. I don't think as a Hamiltonian you can never do anything better than win a championship for your city. I think that's just like the ultimate, right? So on the team that you've rooted for your whole life. So that always stands alone. But my first one in '96, I was a second-year player. I wasn't a starter at that point. I was behind some amazing talent, but a very good contributor to the team. What made that one special is it was played at Iverwood Stadium. It's been the last Grey Cup to be played there. The snow was falling. It was like the most amazing, game experience ever. So driving by the stadium on the morning of the game just brought back like a rush of memories and emotions from wanting to play. And even there was the double blue I was wearing in Hamilton. That's like, man, not good. But I knew that I was able to play in a Grey Cup, which in my wildest dreams, at Iverwood Stadium. So that to me will always be special. The fact we won is great. I don't think win, lose, or draw, it would change that feeling I had. But that was really special as well.
No, I can only imagine. As I said before, adversity hit, and you went through those ropes, and success came after. Now, what I love about this is that you allow me and Stephen to educate ourselves on the CFL and players in it. What was it like playing with Argos legend and NFL legend Doug Flutie?
Oh man! So this is Doug Flutie is the single best player I've ever played with in any sport. I mean, I've played against him in hockey and basketball and baseball, and played with him in football. Of course, he was and still is to this day one of the most unreal competitors and athletes and technicians of the game, and truthfully could have had an even longer NFL career if the Bills didn't screw up their decision to not play him in the playoffs years ago, but that's a whole other story. But if you look at I'll rhyme off the quarterbacks that I played with, and then it'll show you I was very fortunate. So even in BC when I started, I didn't get to play with them, but it was Kent Austin and Danny McManus. They were the two quarterbacks in BC. I came to Toronto in '96. It was Kent Austin. He got traded there. In '97, Doug came. In '98, I went to Hamilton. That was not a good year for quarterbacks. We went through 11 of them. But then I played with Anthony Calvillo in Hamilton, Damon Allen, Jason Moss. So I've got, if you start from Ken Austin, Doug Flutie, Damon Allen, Danny McManus, Ken Austin, Jason Moss is not in that top 5 list because these are all Hall of Famers. So, I was very fortunate, and playing with guys like Doug, to your point, was you just end up being open downfield. because the minute he got the ball in his hands and he left the pocket, it was like a free for all. It's like playing in the schoolyard. So yeah, he made a lot of receivers look pretty darn good.
I'm kind of glad you touched up on Damon Allen even too, because even for me being an Argos fan, you know, my being a fake BC fan, because my family's from BC, my grandfather made the BC Lions back way like 1970, 1980. So for me, being able to see Damon Allen kind of grow from BC to Toronto, win a championship here in Toronto, it's special. So to be able to hear you play with him as well, like that's even more remarkable. I didn't even know you played with Damon Allen too. I thought it was just Doug Flutie, but you know that you've had some very remarkable and good quarterbacks to play with you to pass you the ball. So it makes it easier. It makes it easier. But I'm curious. No, for sure. But I just want to know though, you know, during your time in the CFL, you received many generous opportunities. But I just want to know, like, you had some opportunities, like, so you became the most outstanding Canadian football player, most valuable Canadian. But one that stood out to me personally was being the CFL spokesperson for War Amps program in 1997 that raised $26,000. Can you talk to us about being a part of opportunities like these?
Yeah, you know, I always believe that you know, you're not going to be remembered so much for what you do on the field, but what you do off it. So you know, the community impact importance was something that I looked at doing. I mean, playing in your hometown, you want to give back, and it was not a hard stretch to think of ways to ingrain yourself in the community, and it was important to me. And I grew up in a family that gave back. So you know, selfishly it ends up working in your favor in the end, but that's not the reason you do it. You do it because it's the right thing to do, and you get the rewards eventually. But in that case, you know, doing the War Amps and doing, you know, I ran these First and Goal, the kids camps for kids in Hamilton, and did stuff like Dine with a Line and raise money for charity with our old lineman serving dinner. I used to own a bunch of restaurants at Filthy McNasty's. And then, of course, I had a Morreale macaroni campaign, which I don't think I have anything around here. I don't have a box here, but, you know, we raised, you know, $40-something thousand through selling. It used to be back in the old Flutie Flakes days. Well, I had my own macaroni. So all this stuff we did was to help others, and Hamilton Health Sciences and War Amps and various other groups that I was involved with. But the best accolade, to your point, that I ever received was being named the Tom Pate Award winner for contributions to football, but also to the Players Association, and most importantly to the community. So that one was really important because that extended beyond the football field.
No, for sure. And honestly, like even you know, be able to do something like that, for you to come out of your comfort zone and want to give back to people and want to raise money for different organizations and have your macaroni campaign. I don't want to call it a campaign, but your fundraiser, you know, and stuff like that. It shows the true testament of who you are as a person, and not just as I'm a professional football player, or I'm a professional, but here I am trying to give back to kids, and I want to give back to people in general. So not many people are like you, but the people that are like you, they're very special people. So shout out to you on that one, for real. But I'm glad you touched up on the Players Association, because after you retired from the CFL, you took a different approach towards your life lessons. You were still with the players, but now you're part of that CFL Player Association. What was it like, or talk to us about being back with the players, but having a different title?
Yeah, you know, I was really fortunate. I became a player rep earlier on in my career, and I really appreciated you know, sticking up for the guys in the locker room. And it's not an easy position, because you've got to literally go head to head with management, right? And if there's issues, you got to confront them and be that kind of person in between. But I enjoyed it. I liked that aspect, and I moved on to be a member at large. And then when I retired, I had the opportunity to be the VP of marketing for the Players Association, and we started up a marketing arm that was very similar to what the NFLPA did with Players Inc., and we called it Pro Players, and we started looking for revenue opportunities for players off the field and other benefits, you know, financial benefits, et cetera, to help players either transition or live or try to offset or make more money while playing football, and just become, you know, look for life after football concepts. And I did that for about 6 or 7 years and got a real good understanding. And that's probably one of the biggest things that taught me about how to do the role I do, is that, you know, I was doing work for the players. I was doing work for the Players Association. I was working directly with the league and the league partners, and then the team and the team partners. So I got a real good look, you know, full look at what was going on, and appreciation for the game. And I learned what worked and what didn't work on the business side, and then became the president of the Players Association in 2012, I think. And then because I'd been executive for so long, I'd been part of about 5 collective bargaining agreements and a bunch of other stuff. I was very aware of the financial realities of the league and the players and the teams, and had a pretty good handle on what was going on, and that's really helped me. And it was an incredible experience that very few people get to experience because it's a limited opportunity. So that was one of the best times that I had because it really shaped who I am.
I feel like from what I'm hearing from your story so far, is that a lot of things that's been happening throughout your career has always given you or pushed you towards what's happening later on down in your career. For instance, starting off with not going to the States on the partial scholarships, going to McMaster, becoming a Hall of Famer over there. Then on top of that, you get cut from BC, but you get to the Argos, you win a Grey Cup champion. Oh, you got a call coming in.
I gotta put that on do not disturb.
It's all good. But like I was saying, then you go to you get cut from BC, you win a championship with the Argonauts. Then after your CFL career, you become part of the Players Association, and I think that really kind of helps you become who you are today to start the CEBL and to become the owner of CEBL and help you towards where you are today. So I see a lot of alignment within everything that's happened with you, whether it's positive or negative. And you've been able to really take that and push it for yourself moving forward. So again, another shout out to you. I feel like I'm going to give you a whole bunch of shout outs today, but
all good. It's just listen, you
take it all in.
Life is what you make of it, right? So you either bad things happen and you crawl into a corner, or bad things happen, you learn from it, you move on, and you try and do things better. I mean, I just obviously I was taught well, and by people around me, so I kind of learned that way. Hopefully I can share those feelings with others as well.
Oh, most definitely for sure. But now usually we always get the show started with a little bit of a game, but today we decided to put it halfway through our show. So Devontae, what you got for us today, man?
Yeah, just knowing your career and everything that you've been through, I want to hit you with a real quick hitter before we transition into the next thing. You're the GM of a team in the NFL. You have to pick a wide receiver. You got to pick a quarterback. In today's game, who would you pick?
Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, how do you say no to Patrick Mahomes? I mean, that's tough. I don't. That's tough to even take your mind off it. The minute it gets into your head, I mean, you'd be silly not to make that your number one choice. Just because, again, this is. To me, he reminds me a lot of Flutie, right? He's doing stuff that Doug was doing 25 years ago, making stuff happen, throwing off the wrong foot, wrong hand, underhand, drop kick, run for touchdowns. That's just a special phenomenon. So you have to go with that. The funny thing is, because you have Patrick Mahomes, man, you could be any receiver. You could almost plug and play whatever receiver you want, right? But I always look at guys. Let's take a Julio Jones, a guy like him, where you got all the talent in the world. He just needs an opportunity. You pair him up with a guy like Patrick Mahomes, and there's many more. But there's two right there.
No, you can't fight that argument. Definitely for sure. But let's transition to basketball now. You're the owner of the CBL, but I'm curious, after this long, prestigious career in football, how did basketball get into the picture?
Yeah, I mean, I get that question a lot. So I always loved basketball. I played basketball through high school. I was not good around the rim, but boy, could I rebound with the best of them. And I'd get teed up every game and eventually get kicked out, but it was all part of it. That's it. They called me meat, and I just went on the floor and just knocked people around. That's what I like to do. But, and then when I got to university, obviously my focus was football, but my training was always basketball. So I always trained, whether it's in season or off season, with the basketball team. Every day, pick up on the court. It just helped my footwork. It helped my skill development. A very quick reaction time, and I enjoyed playing with guys that are better than me, quite frankly. So that was kind of I've always loved basketball. When I left being the president of the Players Association in 2014, it was like, okay, what do I do now? And I've been involved since 2008 with broadcasting on the Score and TSN, Sportsnet, CBC, etc. So I was always connected to football, but I didn't know what to do come 2014. I thought that there'd be a position that would exist in football that would keep me there, and there was with broadcasting, but it wasn't it wasn't the position I desired. I wanted to be in the business side like I am now.
Yeah.
So, I kind of had to reinvent myself. And I took a couple jobs in the interim before this opportunity came. And I was like, man, back to the real world. And it was not fun, but what it does do is it teaches you to say, listen, if you have a goal in mind, you can get there. You can get through. The path is different for everybody. For me, I had to grind it out in a couple jobs that I probably look back and say, wow, those were tough. They were tough at the time, so I know they're tough now. But the one job I actually landed was a really, really interesting one. That was selling private jets. So that particular job was huge because it actually led me to this job, right? The amount of people you meet, you can imagine that in that line of work is, the one percenters. So you meet a lot of interesting people and you get to know a lot. And that got me to meet the founder of CBL, Richard Petco, and he actually had pitched me to be the commissioner of the NBL because he had a team in the NBL at that time, the River Lions. And I went and met with those guys and just realized quite quickly that it wasn't for me, and shared that with Richard. And then that really became, okay, well then if you were to do it, how would you build it? What would you do differently? So 5 years ago now, maybe even a little bit more, Richard and I sat down with Josh Canuster, our VP here, and a few other people, and we started laying the groundwork for the CEBL. And the hardest part about it was the amount of teams or combinations that have come and failed here, right? That came for a year and left, came for half a season left, played a few years and left, or in some cases are still existing, but not at the level that we wanted to be at. We wanted to be at, we want to be the true top domestic league in this country, regardless of sport. And I believe we will be. And I think we're well on the way. But, I love the sport of basketball. I love the globalness of basketball. I love the fact that, the Raptors and the success that they've had 25 years ago. I mean, the majority of our players, Devontae, as you would know, were probably Vince Carter era guys, right? Guys that grew up. That was the first one to get them to bounce a basketball. And now, you move into the future. And so think of the guys that are on our teams now, for the most part, grew up in that era. And then, 2-3 years ago, the Raps win again. And that sets off another lightning rod. So we're going to see basketball grow in this country at an exponential rate, and the participation has increased tremendously, and the exposure's increased, and the opportunities are now there with the CBL to really keep guys home, or at least allow players to come back home, make some money and play. And that whole process was kind of all somehow connected. It all came out of the fact that I had experience playing at the CFL, and I had experience on the PA side and then the broadcast side, and then working at various odd jobs and what have you. I think everything happens for a reason. And I had to go through those couple of years of just trying to be a normal in person and or take a somewhat normal job, maybe is a better way to put it. And but it drove me to where I am now. So I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, I don't want to get too much off topic here, but trial and error. Ideas come together, you land that job, and sometimes it's not what you know, but it's who you know. I don't want to get too off topic, but you just kind of hit it on the last section there, seeing how much the country, especially the city of Toronto, has grown towards basketball. Do you think if you're a younger version of yourself that you would choose basketball over football?
Well, that's my point to the beginning. Like when I sat in that stands at Ivor Wynn, I fell in love with what I saw. You could have probably replaced that sport with something else. I don't know. But at that particular time, that's kind of what I knew. And I grew up in a family that loved football, but I grew up in a family that loved sport. And that's my hope, is that there's young kids out. I know it's already happening because I hear about it, but there's young kids out there that can actually go to arena. And I hope they can come to arena again real soon and be able to see people they know or they've heard of or they saw on TV or are friends with or related to or went to school with or, somehow, some way feel like they have a connection to, like I felt like I had a connection to the players on the field when I watched. And then that creates that fire to be able to go and really live out that dream. And that dream may take you 1,000 places and back to basketball, and it may take you somewhere completely else. But unless you can feel it, touch it, see it, smell it, it's tough, right? Yeah. So I give a lot of kudos to the players that play in the CBL and the players that play all over the world, basketball hasn't really been advocated for and helped in any significant way by any member of government or any provincial government or federal government. These guys and girls have ground it out on their own, and they have found the pathways, and in many cases had to leave Canada to get to that pathway. We're trying to say, listen, if you want to leave Canada, that's fine. Like, you don't want to change your behavior because the opportunity may be different, but we want to create a pathway where you don't have to leave the country. You can build a brand, for yourself. And then when you're done playing, whenever that may be, after a long and great career, you can enter into the next phase of your life. But people will know who you are and be able to appreciate it. And it'll hopefully open up some doors. You'll know the guys that play in our league for the most part. They've spent the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years playing in the highest leagues in Europe or Asia or overseas. And they come back home and they're superstars there. And they come back home and they're like, oh, I remember that guy. He played whatever. We want to build those stars back up again. I think we've done a really good job, and at the same time, develop the next generation of basketball stars in Canada.
No, that's an extremely great point. And my next point here, you kind of hit on it again, about differentiating the rules. What are your thoughts on FIBA rules?
I love FIBA rules. I love FIBA rules because it's a different game. I think people in North America, they get so wrapped up in the NBA because the NBA has done obviously a tremendous job at what they do, and their brand is unreal. But their style of game, the NBA style of game, I think is inferior to the FIBA game, just the way I look at it. FIBA is a much more free-flowing, fast game. And Devontae, I'd love to get your opinion on it, but our game, because we get asked this a lot, and I've heard a lot of I don't ever try to make basketball decisions. Like, I'll introduce the Elam ending because to me that's like a cool thing that is beyond basketball, but also great for basketball. We can touch on that if you want later. But I think the basketball people make basketball decisions, and I know that our talent is good. I know how it compares. I know what I've been told, and I know what I see. So the FIBA game lends itself to be the most globally recognized game. And if you just look at the countries, and we have some of the best NBA talent in the world, it doesn't always reflect on the national team because we're kind of, are they going to play or are they not going to play? And if they don't play, then it becomes, okay, we have to grab guys from all over Europe and compile them and no practice and what have you. So the position of the CBL is to create those silos and that pathway from grassroots all the way up to pro. So we don't lose guys and try to bring them back. They're already in our country, and we're building those national teams from within. And if you look at some of the best, the top world ranked teams in basketball outside of US, they're all countries that you'd be like, what? Australia's number 3 in the world?
Yeah.
Like Russia's up there, Brazil, Argentina's up. Whoa, where's Canada? We're at 20 or 21 is not bad, but we could be up there. We've never had that pathway within Canada. We've always relied on trying to grab a guy back here and grab a guy back here. So that's kind of the focus we have in helping to grow kind of that part of the business as well.
No, that's so important. And I think Canada is on a splurge or on an uprise in terms of getting these players and solidifying, the basketball here. And I'm not surprised, and I won't be surprised if we quickly skyrocket up that list. I'll talk about the Elam ending now. I think it's so important, and I think it's such a cool element that you guys have added to the game. Obviously, throughout this last year and throughout the bubble that I was a part of, that's been a huge talk about in the CBL, and I like it. It's definitely a different twist to the game that you guys have added, and it also holds teams accountable. You can't give a team too much of a lead because it's extremely hard to get back, and that makes you take every session, every second, or every possession of the game throughout the course of the game much more seriously. So I love it. I'm sure the players love it. I haven't, while I was in the stint, we didn't have any complaints about it. A different element to the game. I love what you guys do with it. And I think it's something that you guys should definitely continue doing. Now, you hit a lot of things that we want to talk about next in terms of, the different formats you have here. So I'm going to skim through here a little bit. But this past summer, you did, in the CBL, you did something nobody else could do in the Canadian League was able to do during a national pandemic. How hard was the process of getting that done?
unbelievably hard. And let's not forget, we were the first. So there was no, and we're not the NHL, we're not the NBA, we're not the Major League Baseball in Canada. We can rely on somebody in New York to make our decisions for us and fund us. We sitting in this office here and just grinding it out. So we didn't know, and the people we were talking to didn't know. Like, this is all new. So it was incredibly difficult. In hindsight, when I look back now, it wasn't as difficult as what we've been going through this year, because this year, in our desire to get back to return to our markets, that means that we're not just dealing with the province of Ontario and holding a bubble. We're dealing with Ontario and Alberta and BC and Saskatchewan, and making sure that all 4 provinces are on the same page, that our protocols make sense, and every province is at a different stage. So one may have this many cases, the other may have this one. So it's hard to get everybody on the same page. The amount of work that goes into that is incredible. It's just nonstop. We haven't taken a day off here since we started prepping for the bubble last year, which was about the end of March. And it is what it is. We won't stop until we get it done. And at some point we will relax, but it probably won't be till August 22nd when we have our championship game this year.
Yep. Now, you know what? Let's go to this. On a scale from 1 to 10, how satisfied are you with how the bubble went?
I'm really satisfied with how the bubble went. For guys that was their first experience, I almost feel sad for them a bit, because it wasn't the CEBL experience we wanted to deliver. But at the same time, I think they all appreciate it. They just want to get back to play. And you'll understand this better, is that last year those guys came back and had to work hard over a short period of time to get back to play. They hadn't played, some of them, for 3-4 months, because they got sent back from Europe. They were sitting around. You couldn't really train. So the games were tough on the players. There was a lot of basketball in a short period of time without a lot of kind of long training camp and all this other stuff and other protocols. But everybody bought in and everybody did a tremendous job. I was really satisfied with how everything worked out. There's always stuff behind the scenes you can do better, but I think from a basketball perspective, the players were satisfied. I mean, they put up with a lot of stuff. Some of them were in quarantine for like 17, 18 days. It was, we had some moments there as the first ones. We had to figure it out. But that's what makes it this year so much more satisfying. We're still under protocols. We're still under all this crap. But, we have to, we're getting back more to normal. So we've gone from a 6-game season with playoffs to now a 14-game season with playoffs. So we're inching back towards where we want to be. And it'll be, in some markets like Alberta and in Saskatchewan, there'll be fans. So we're going to get back to feeling more like normal. So, everything we did last year was amazing. It's funny how quick you just forget about it, because you got to turn the page and go on. But I think I'm excited about our players this year getting a more traditional experience with us. So they feel like, okay, they're back in the community. They feel like they belong to the community and the team in that market, and people know them, and they have more freedom, and it's just a little bit better experience. And then that'll roll right into 2022, when we hope to have 10 teams and be playing 24-game season. And so the long answer to your question, but I think the bubble was incredibly successful on many levels. I always think I'm always a player first guy, which sometimes doesn't get me in trouble, but I always lean towards the players. Right? I just think, I know if we can maintain the players' happiness, then that will pay off for us in the long run. The players are our biggest asset. So in that case, we tried to do everything we could under the bubble, and I really appreciate the players just jumping in and doing it and just being appreciative that they had a chance to play.
Yeah, you guys have taken this league to a whole different level, and in terms of some of the guys that you've been able to get and commit to these teams, it's unbelievable. I'm extremely excited to watch it. It's going to be high-level basketball. But you touched on this as well just earlier. You added your 7th team to the CEBL recently. Correct me if I'm wrong, in Ottawa. How many teams would you like to see in the CEBL over the course of 5 years?
Yeah, so we'll be at 9, probably 10 teams for 2022. We've already announced Montreal, so they'll be the 8th team, and then we're working on a couple more that we will unveil shortly. And then I personally believe by 24, 25, we'll be at 14 to 16 teams. I think, and that means two teams in the East Coast, another team in Quebec City, team in Winnipeg, team in Calgary, and then a team in that Vancouver area. And
manifest it and put it in the air. I like it.
It is what it is. You have to believe to achieve, right?
Yeah.
And it's, we're also in a point in time where basketball is the most participated sport for 12 to 17-year-olds, and the most important sport for immigrants, and the coolest sport for teenage age people, and the participation rates are through the roof. And so, I touched on earlier, but politicians that have typically done whatever they can for hockey are starting to say, oh, I think there's a broader community here that we need to take care of. So I'm ready to knock those doors down, and that's my job, and that's what I do when I kind of lobby and advocate for the sport. Because if the sport is strong across the board, that's good for everybody. It doesn't help anybody if we're strong and everyone else is suffering. Everybody has to be strong. So Canada Basketball as a sport organization needs to be strong, and the Raptors and the G League and us, we all have to be in a healthy position.
Yeah. You guys, as I said, you guys continue to knock down doors, and I'm super excited to see where this league goes. And I also don't think the Toronto Maple Leafs are helping their case of hockey in this in this province right now. So basketball is slowly but surely taking over. Now, you talked about a little bit earlier, Mike, being behind the scenes. What's the one thing is there anything you'd be able to share with us exclusively on Talk Your Exposure coming into the CBL, if there is any?
Oh man, you talking about coming up this year, or what are you thinking about?
You tell us. We would love to know if there's anything.
I think you'll see. I think you'll see a couple of GTA teams before you know it. I think that market is ripe for basketball. That's where the majority of the basketball talent comes from.
Yeah.
In and around the Toronto area, west and east, and all over. So I think you'll see some teams popping up there. I think you'll see us, work towards being, a bigger and better broadcast deal in the future. I think you'll see us being main players in the sports betting landscape, because we do have major opportunities. I think what you'll see quicker than all those things is our inclusion in international events, and us hosting international teams, and us going to international teams and playing in major tournaments and being part of the bigger FIBA discussion. And we can represent Canada on behalf of Canada Basketball. So those opportunities are huge for us.
Hopefully, Talk Your Exposure will be part of that broadcasting one day. Manifest it into the world. Manifest it into the world.
Just believe it.
I like it, Steve. And Mike, again, I want to thank you so much. We're coming to the conclusion of this show. Kudos to you guys for having being very, getting this league done overall, and being very efficient in it. We like to conclude this show, Mike, with a game called In a Perfect World. I'm going to put you through a scenario here, Mike. I'm very interested to see what you have to say, because this is a little bit different. You're not a player per se. You are on the other side of things now. So I'm going to put you through this scenario, and you're simply just going to fill in the blanks. All right?
Gotcha. Yep.
So in this perfect world, this utopia, you're finished high school, right? Steven, stop it. You're finished high school. You've decided to put the shoes down. You're in the basketball world, but you get an offer in this perfect world to be the GM of a college NCAA team. One school you would pick in this perfect world.
Ooh. Most people would probably pick your traditional kind of major basketball institutions, the Dukes and the rest of it. I'm like, send me to Northern California. I can hang out there. I don't care what team it is. Put me to a community college. I'll be happy. Just send me to Northern California, and I'm good. I'll make do.
Okay, so in this perfect world, I'm going to give you two options. Let's say Fresno State. Who else is up there? You know what? For now, for the sake of the show and on time for you, Mike, we're going to put you Fresno State.
Yep.
Right? Paul George. Alma mater. So we're over there at Fresno State, right? And you're doing a wonderful job. You're doing an extremely wonderful job. almost to the point where you're taking those next steps now, and they want you to enter to the NBA, right in this utopia. You have every team in the world that you could take this job for. Where would you pick? Then give us your 2 cents why.
Oh, the first one that I've never thought of this before, but the first one that popped into my mind was the New York Knicks. I don't know. There's just something about, I just feel like that brand, and obviously that city, but that brand and the resurgence and the creativity that can come with being part of that resurgence, that's where my mind goes. So I'm less about going to the old established things. Give me something that I gotta work with. Like I need some clay to mold, and that would be an opportunity. RJ's there, and they got some damn good talent. So it wouldn't be a bad place. I'm sure a lot of people would want to go there.
No, hey. I like you are 2 for 2 in my books right now. I don't know about Steven, but I like the answer and I love the logic. And Steven, feel free to answer this last part. Mike, don't mind Steven on the phone here. We always like to do this last part. We put some money on the table just under the kitchen in terms of what we do. I'm gonna put you through this last scenario now. Doing a wonderful job with the Knicks, as they actually are doing this year. Kudos to them in the season. Now you're at a point where you guys have a lot of luxury tax coming in, and you control that in this perfect world. You have 2 players in the NBA that you could bring over, kind of the similar situation that I asked you earlier with the NFL players. But here are the rules. The first player you could pick, Mike, is there either a rookie or a sophomore, and the second player that you could pick is either 3 years and above. Who are those 2 players you would pick?
Zion's still a sophomore, isn't he? Zion a sophomore?
I didn't even get to pick, Steven. Doesn't count, but yes.
Okay. So Zion for sure. And then I want to say Damian Lillard.
Ooh. Hey, that's Devontae's favorite player, by the way. It's his favorite player. So
there you go.
And you know
we didn't talk before. I'm just saying. Those are guys that want to play. I got to be with the guy who wants to play. Like that just lives and breathes. I mean, Zion's a whole different beast. Like he's just special. But Lillard, I mean, he just every night does his thing, and I just love it.
No, I think especially being in that environment too, the New York Knicks. I think those 2 players could definitely live up to that city and the energy that it brings. Mike, last question. A lot of NBA going on right now, of course, it being the playoffs, but let's bring it back to regular season here for a second. Who's some of these players, besides Zion and Damian Lillard, that you know what, I'm going to turn on the television today and I'm going to watch because I love their game?
Well, I mean, I think Trey Young for sure. Morant, I mean, man, some of the stuff he can do.
Yeah.
Even Anthony Edwards, like a lot of these young guys, back in the day, I think a lot of these young guys used to take time to get it assimilated. Even look at RJ. I mean, within a year, these guys are dominant, sometimes right away.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the pressures of playing in the NBA as a 20-year-old, that's impressive. Like that's just, you got some special sauce. Never mind the athletic ability, just the pressure of playing. So those are guys that I'm captivated by because they're almost revolutionizing, the Kevin Garnett's of the old days, right? When they walked in, they were like just different.
Yeah.
And that's what these guys are. They're just different.
Kevin Garnett is actually my favorite player. So you're making smiles for both of us right now. You're making me smile. You're making Devontae smile. You're good with your words, Mike.
Well, listen, when you get to the NBA level, how can you go wrong? I mean, these guys are special, right? So I could have probably thrown out any names, but there's just some guys that are just even more special, which is kind of hard to believe.
And it's actually funny you bring up John Morant because there's been a whole discussion with Devontae and our friends regarding where he is right now in terms of the top 10 in terms of point guard right now. But that's a whole other discussion for another day. But Mike, we have a question for you. Our last question before we conclude this show. Who is somebody that you like to see on Talk Your Exposure? But here's the kicker, though. You have to help us get them on the show.
Oh, man. So where do you want to go with this though? What's your sweet spot? So are you basketball? Are you all sports? What's your sweet spot?
Mike's a little bit more diverse. That's a great question. Steven, I'll give you this one.
Typically we do basketball, but for you being as prestigious a football player as you are, I feel like you might know some different athletes and different type caliber. So we like to hear all types of avenues.
Yeah, man. You know what? There's just so many guys that I know. When you play pro sports, guys that play hockey want to play football, and guys that play football want to play hockey or basketball. It's usually, so, and they had played at a high level. So I played with so many guys that would be like interesting and intriguing and know their stuff. I can't even give you an answer now. That's a big cop out by me because I need more time to think about it. But off the top of my head, hell, I don't think I can land you a Doug Flutie at this point in time. But if I could, I would definitely try. I'll have to ring him. I'll go through Darren, his brother, and see what we can do. If I can get you that, I think you'd have fun with it. But let me think about it. That's not the answer you wanted, but man, I think my head's too full right now to think to pick one out.
That's probably the most fair answer that we actually got on the show yet, to be honest with you. So that's probably, I can appreciate a fair answer, to be honest. But, that's a wrap in terms of talking exposure. But before we go any further with this and we get to our final credits, I want to say, Mike, where can we find you on social media? Where are some places we can find you on Twitter, maybe LinkedIn, maybe Instagram, whatever it might be? Where can we find you?
Yeah, so Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, all just my name, Mike Morreale 1818. It's the best place. And then for the CBL, it's CEBL League with just one L, so CEB League. And from there, you can kind of go everywhere. But yeah, I'm relatively new to this social media stuff. I like it, and it's a great way to communicate, and great way for us to get our message out and our brand out and all that stuff. So. Come look for me, and hopefully you won't be too disappointed.
We'll definitely give you a follow on all social platforms, and make sure all of our viewers listening want to give them a follow as well. It's CEB. You said it's CEB or CBL?
CEB League.
CEB League on Instagram. Make sure you guys go check that out. Like Devontae and we both said earlier, it's one of the hottest leagues right now in Canada, in my honest opinion. And a lot of our guests have said the same thing as well. Not to say that because you're on the show right now. Honestly, a lot of our guests have said it. We've heard it from Negus, who's openly talked about the CEBL, numerous times. Dwayne noticed, he talked about it last year as well, the CEBL. Shane, the list kind of keeps going on and on and on. Even Devontae in itself. So, shout out to you and kudos to you for being able to put that together and be able to put together a league that a lot of people can really talk so highly of. So thank you, Mike, again for your time, and thank you for giving us some time to talk insight regarding some CEBL and basketball, football. And again, if for all of our viewers listening, make sure you guys go subscribe to Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you find your podcast. Turn on your notifications, under Talk Your Exposure. Enjoy these shows. One more time, Mike, we want to thank you for your time.
My pleasure, guys. It was great to meet you guys and seeing you again, Devontae, and best of luck with everything. We'll talk soon.